Great Writers Media.
Hello, I'm Dr. Larry Carnes, and welcome to Books of the Month. We're excited to have you join us for another powerful episode, and we have a very special guest with us. Dr. Barry, how are you today, sir?
I'm very well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
It's a pleasure to have you with us. I want you to do this for me. Look right here and introduce yourself to our viewing audience.
Well, my name is Barry Gold, and I'm not a physician. I am a scientist. I have a PhD in pharmacology. It is a medical science taught during medical school's second year. I chose writing when I retired from active working for a corporation, and I enjoy it very much. I wrote a book on opium. And my interest early on was the history thereof. Okay. And I realized that was a small market.
So let's do this. You've written this powerful book, We're Overdosed. And this book gets beneath the surface of how people are getting prescribed drugs and things of that nature. Now, you being a scientist, speak to us about what motivated you to write this book. What was the concern that you had?
Many years ago, I taught a course at a New Jersey State College. And the course was made up of recovering addicts studying for certification as drug counselors. And we broke for lunch, and they sat next to me, and they looked over at me, and they said, "Why do you teach us?" I said, "What do you mean? I'm paying back to society." "You're not an addict?" I said, "No, I'm not an addict." "Why?" "Because only addicts care about us."
Wow.
And I thought, oh, that's pathetic. And that story stayed with me 20 years.
So that was their truth.
Oh, they were for real.
That only addicts cared about addicts.
Yeah.
But now you have this desire in your heart because that thing resonated with you.
For 20 years. Until I wrote the book, and it became my first chapter.
So it took you 20 years.
Well, life interfered.
Sure, I mean, we have to but that thing never left you.
Never left me. Stayed with me 20 years. To this day, it stays with me.
What is that has that passion in you that wants to help people?
Because people are not expendable.
Wow.
People are people. And they all have something to contribute.
Let me do this. There's someone watching this interview right now. You just said something that speaks volumes. People are not expendable. Take about 60 seconds. Look at that. Talk to that person who they think they're insignificant. Talk to them and let them know they help.
Everyone has something to contribute. And if you think you have nothing to contribute, you're wrong. You have everything to contribute. And my friends ask me, "Why do you talk to truck drivers and college professors?" Because they both have something to say to me.
Yes, from a different perspectives.
You have something to learn from everyone.
I like to think of this. Many people, we have different functions but equal value.
Exactly.
What are some nuggets that you talk about this, how people were overdosed. The illegal drug trade, but then we give them drugs to get them off the drugs, and now they become hooked on the drugs that we give them to get them off the drugs.
All right. That's because our current therapeutic tools are inadequate. But the pharmaceutical industry, the much maligned pharmaceutical industry, is working on that.
Okay. Talk to us about that.
Well, I used to manage international drug development, and we had multidisciplinary teams. I had a physician, a scientist, a chemist, a marketing person, a regulatory affairs person. And I found we could solve problems that we couldn't solve thinking about it on our own or talking to one other person, because it was multidisciplinary.
Okay.
And we weren't afraid to open our mouths. Nobody was judgmental.
So important.
So I said, all right, what do we do wrong in this country about managing drugs? Well, we have the Drug Enforcement Administration. a law enforcement body. We have the National Institute on Drug Abuse, an R&D body. We have the Food and Drug Administration, a licensing body.
So there are so many.
But they
all of these
all
layers.
report to someone else.
Okay.
No one talks to each other. There is no team approach.
Sitting at the table.
So I said, all right, what if we reorganized the government, took all those agencies that dealt with drugs, and they reported to one person, and they met as a team? Wouldn't they be able to solve problems better than anyone else?
Okay, so now there's a thought. Let's come together, collaborate,
Yeah.
so that we can solve the problems. This pandemic, really, that we're facing. Let's get together and solve those problems. What are some nuggets that you place in this powerful book that you've written that will propel, if you want to say, our viewing audience and listening audience to want to go and purchase this book?
Think back to COVID 2 years ago or 3 years ago. COVID was killing 60, 70,000 people a year. We thought it was horrible, and it was on the news every night with pictures of us wearing masks.
Yes.
Now we're killing 110,000 Americans a year with opium. 70% of them have fentanyl in them. Fentanyl coming from the Chinese.
Okay, so now opium, illegal still.
Yes.
How many people a year?
110,000 last year died from opium overdose.
Overdosing from opium. How do we fix it?
I think we fix it by technology. And I give the example, I can open my garage door with my cell phone. I can check the status of my electric car with my cell phone. Why can't we use a cell phone to sniff drugs out of a semi-trailer filled with Mexican corn with a little package in it of fentanyl that's hidden in the corn?
Fentanyl.
That's where it's coming from, Mexico. The Chinese send parts of the molecule to Mexico. It's assembled into fentanyl and smuggled into the United States.
So there's a process of development once it gets to Mexico.
They make the drug out of the parts supplied by the Chinese.
Wow. And so one of the steps that we can use, if I'm listening to you correctly, would be to do something electronically to sense.
I call it sniffer technology.
Okay.
We need to be able to have a sniffer machine that will go in a semi-trailer filled with Mexican blue corn and say, oh, there's fentanyl hidden back there.
It can distinguish between the blue corn and the fentanyl.
Yeah.
Now, when you say that, I'm visualizing when we're in the airport and the dogs are walking around sniffing so they can detect something naturally with their noses. You're saying, well, let's use technology.
Well, I don't know that a dog could sniff out fentanyl in 18 tons of corn.
Yeah. No, because it's buried in there, right?
Because it's
But I'm
buried
using
in
just
there.
the principle, the concept.
But I'm saying, what if we had a machine, a technical machine, I call it a sniffer,
Okay.
that can sniff out the fentanyl in corn or in tractors or
Wow.
in anything else we import from Mexico.
So let me ask you this. Are you working with people to develop that technology, or how's that going?
I'm not an engineer. I'm a drug scientist.
Have you given the idea the thought?
I put it in my book, and I'm
Okay.
hoping someone picks it up and says, oh, there's an idea. I've also asked many times, I'm more than willing to work with a Drug Enforcement Administration public affairs officer.
Give us some nuggets from this powerful book that you've written.
I gave you one. I said,
Yes.
let's reorganize the cabinet
Okay.
to manage drugs a different way.
Right.
I mentioned that drugs are killing right now 111,000 people last year. It's so sad.
Yes.
And it's never on the news.
So, by our viewing audience, our listening audience, going out and purchasing this book, We're Overdosed, they can educate themselves.
That is my goal.
Okay.
For people to, people say to me, did you write an anti-drug book? And I say, no, I don't take a political stance. I educate you about the dangers of drugs. The expression I developed is, these drugs have hooks. Don't get caught.
These drugs have hooks.
Don't get caught.
Don't get caught. Do you share in the book any of the preventative measures that a person can apply personally?
I don't focus on staying away from drugs other than point out what I believe are the reasons people start to use drugs.
Oh, okay.
And people, if you ask an addict, why did you start? And they'll always say the same thing. I felt lousy. Well, what was the lousy feeling? And I believe it's loneliness. Why do we suffer loneliness as Americans? Because we sit at the table and stare at our phones, and we don't talk to each other anymore. And I say, if you're feeling lonely, go talk to someone.
Yes.
Call your kids, call your friends, find a meeting, find a crowd, and just go be in the crowd. Did you know that it's contact with other human beings that raises the endorphin levels in our brain?
Oh, that's a proven. Yeah. And
just being with other people.
Yeah. And something else that we take for granted many times is the power of touch. People need to, and when I say the power of touch,
well, I'm not going to touch a stranger.
Well, I mean, there's a physical touch, but then there's an emotional and psychological touch.
Just show an interest in another human being.
The power of touch.
Yeah.
And you've done this so eloquently. Now, you talked about the group of people that you meet with, and the person asked you, why are you here? Why do you care about us?
Yeah.
Because no one cares about us.
No one cares about them.
Well, you touched them.
And here I am, just some scientist who came out of nowhere. I flew in from Germany that morning and taught that course later the day. And they said, but you're teaching us. And I say, yeah, I like to teach.
Okay.
And you're valuable.
So you taught them that they were valuable.
Yeah.
They had purpose. They were significant.
The tragedy is I didn't stay in touch with them.
Ah, okay.
And life got in the way.
Wow. That's powerful. Now, we have 2 minutes. I want you to do this for me. Take the time to disseminate to our viewing audience any information, be it website, email, any way they can get in contact with you if you would like people to get in contact with you. Take about 45 seconds and look right there and share that information.
My website is barrygoldwriter.com. And there is an opportunity within that website to email me. Please, I'd love to hear from you.
Available to assist and help.
Anytime.
Something you've been doing
for half my life.
For half of your life.
Half my life.
Reaching out and helping people. And see, here's the interesting part about that. Something that I don't have to experience it personally to have passion and compassion on someone who's going through this thing.
We're all Americans. We owe it to each other to be good to each other. Period. That is the only emotion I'm seeking.
People caring about people.
Yep.
Wow, that is so powerful. I tell you, it's an awesome book that you've done, awesome undertaking. We want to thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
Oh.
I enjoyed visiting.
It's been a pleasure.
And let me hear from you.
I'm Dr. Larry Carnes. This is Books of the Month. Don't go any place. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Visit www.greatwritersmedia.com. Email us at info@greatwritersmedia.com. Call us at 877-600-5469. Subscribe now.